Welcome to An Actor's Arc. I'm Sean Douglas, and this season I talk with 7 actors in the early leg of their artistic journeys, how they got started, and how they have found their footing. In this episode, I talk with Sheldon D. Brown. Hi, Sheldon D. Brown. Welcome to An Actor's Arc.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
What was the first moment that you knew you wanted to be an actor? Or what was the first impulse for acting in you? Do you remember?
So I've been acting pretty much all of my life. I kind of went into it involuntarily at first. I used to act in a lot of my church plays growing up. My grandma, I was very shy when I was a kid. I would cry anytime I had to speak to adults or in front of a large group. And my grandma kind of wanted me to get out of crying every time I had to speak. And so she just tossed me into all of these church plays that we would have. And I played First Shepherd and our nativity.
Oh, First
story.
Shepherd, that's a great role.
Yes. And I played first narrator as well in the nativity. And so those were the very first times I was getting a chance to experience performing. And at first it was terrifying. It was really, really, really terrifying. I just hated being in front of people. I would shake, I would get so nervous. And then I auditioned for an art school in my hometown. And the art school was a 6-year program, middle school and high school. And I originally wanted to go in for band. I played the saxophone at the time.
Something where you didn't have to speak.
Yes. I auditioned, and when you get accepted, you have a major and a minor. So when I got my acceptance letter, it said my major was theater. And my minor was band. And I was so shocked because I didn't even initially want to audition for theater. I only auditioned for it because my best friend at the time was also auditioning for theater. And that was the only thing they were auditioning for. And we wanted to be in the same classes.
Oh, funny.
So I said, you know what? I didn't have you had to do a monologue. I didn't have a monologue prepared. And so I found they had a whole table of monologues. I just grabbed the first page and memorized it really quick, went in there and did it. And the teacher at the end of it was like, that's a girl's monologue. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know. I know it's a girl's monologue. And, I think that was one of the things she told me. She said, I love that you went your own direction and picked your own monologue regardless of gender.
And it was just happenstance.
Happenstance. But what I learned and what I loved about acting over time was the freedom and the ability it gave me to express myself. And not only to build the confidence so I wasn't, crying every time I had to speak in front of people, but also the ability to say, okay, you think this monologue is meant for a man, or you think this monologue is meant for a woman, but it's not about the gender, it's about what you can bring to the story. And so me not knowing that, I'm just being youthful and kind of just acting on impulse and doing what I want to do, which is something I think we lose over time. But something that I was able to harness and hold because of theater. And so still was hedging on, if I was really doing the acting seriously. I was the understudy of the lead in our middle school showcase. And I kind of, I'm a Leo, so I kind of was just like, oh, I'm not, if I'm an understudy, then this is not for me. I need to be in the limelight. And the person I understudied had to drop out of the show. And so I ended up performing in their plays. And that was
Destiny had a place for you there, Sheldon.
right. Leading man, leading person.
Hey, can I ask you where your school was?
I went to school at Cybers School for the Arts in Dayton, Ohio. And it wasn't until freshman year of high school that we had I was in track and field because I was thinking I could do sports still at the time. I'm terrible at most sports, but track and field I just knew I would be really great at. I was always a fast runner, and I did a track meet, and it was my first track meet, 200-meter dash, and I ran dead last. And not last, like, I'm the last one to the finish line. I'm behind someone else. It's like everyone had finished the race. They're setting up for the next race. And I'm still on the field. And so I was so embarrassed. I was so defeated. I was winded. And I said, you know what? I can't do this. I can't be on the track. This is not for me. And so I quit. And at the same time, there were auditions for the spring play. And, I went to a school, it was middle school through high school. So everyone, 8th grade through seniors, could audition for these plays. And so, you're competing with people who are older, they've been acting at the school for a while. And so, I never really thought that I could compete with some of those students. But, I had nothing else to do. And my grandma was like, you need to find something to do. And so I auditioned for the school play and I got a role in it. And it was with 2 seniors at the time. The role was I had to be shirtless on stage. We were on the beach or something like that. And I remember how terrified I was to be shirtless in front of an audience, especially since the 2 of the guys that I was with were on the basketball team. They were jacked. And here I am, just string bean coming up to the stage. And we would they were so supportive of me. We would be in the back doing push-ups, and I would rub baby oil over my body.
Oh,
I
wow.
rubbed baby oil on the body so I looked like I was glistening and like sweating and stuff. And I remember the first few moments just in rehearsal, once we would be in tech, I was shaking because I had never actually, performed in front of my friends in this way before. And we would do something called teasers, where we would preview the show in like 10 minutes, 10 minutes
Excerpt
clips.
or
So we would do little clips or little skits from the scenes. And so one of the scenes was the beach scene, dreading. And so, it was an excuse for everyone to get out of class because it would be during the school day. So everyone get out of class and they can go see this teaser. And so here comes the moment. It's, I'm coming on stage, no shirt on. And everyone, all of my friends start and clapping and being stupid, but also being very supportive. And I did the whole scene and everyone was laughing. It was the first time that people were laughing, not at me because I'm not sure, but laughing because I was being funny. And I left feeling so confident, so good about myself. I was like, oh, you did that. Oh, you did that. That was amazing. And I completely fell in love with wanting to perform ever since then. So I was like, I'm going to actually go for it. And so throughout my time in middle school, I started focusing on theater more than I focused on music. Until one of my teachers at the time, pulled me aside and said, hey, have you thought about doing this? Like in the real world? And I was like Denzel, watch, how does one, this is before even knowing that there are so many different types of actors, right? So many different types of, yeah, you can be in Hollywood, you can be on movies, you can be the person in the community center doing art because you love it. You can be the person that's doing theater at Chicago Shape, Steppenwolf, or whatever, or Black Box Theater, what have you. But this is me not knowing any of that, you know. So my only thought was like, you want me to be like Denzel Washington, like, you know, in the movies? And she said, yeah.
Wow, that must have also been a confidence booster.
Yeah, she said, I think you could do that. And I was like, I don't know, how would I do something like that? And she said, you know, you can go to school for it. I had no idea you could go to school for acting. And so over time, the next couple of years was getting me to look at schools for acting, tour schools for acting, and prepare audition pieces to audition for acting majors at some of these colleges and universities of getting into acting.
Well, how great to start from a place of feeling like you weren't even able to communicate in front of people, or you didn't want to communicate in front of people. And how astute of your grandmother to find a way to try to attack that problem.
Yeah.
And then that got you to the art school, and then that got you meeting another challenge, which also boosted your confidence. And that's important, right? Just to have those boosts along the way, I think.
Absolutely, you know, and it's always, you know, I was fortunate enough to have people in my corner who were boosting me, like my grandmother and my teachers, or the people, you know, some of the people at church. But, you know, throughout my entire career, I have to be that on my own boost sometimes.
Of course. Because
it's hard, you know, you're not always going to have people tell you you're amazing, or that we want you, or that you should, you know, you should do this, you should do that. You have to be that own voice, your own biggest cheerleader at times, even when you're your own worst critic.
Can we jump back in time or forward in time to?
Sure.
So you did these auditions for college, and how did that go?
It was stressful. It was so stressful. So I did two things. We had a kind of a preliminary audition for like mock auditions for juniors. And so I had the opportunity to have the experience of auditioning for colleges before senior year. And so it was a part of the International Thespian Society Festival local chapter in Ohio. And so, you know, my theater teacher, it was so overbearing, in a good way, but also in a very stressful way. And so, you know, we took a headshot downstairs in the basement of our school with one of the photographers from the visual arts department. It was black and white, getting resume printed out, stapled together with all my high school shows on there. And, you know, got a chance to audition for a few, and then you would see what schools would want to call you back or something like that. So that was kind of, you know, and that was the experience where I'm in a room and there are like several different universities, people from different universities present.
What was required for those auditions? Did you do a monologue? Did you do a song? Yeah. Were you a singer?
I do sing, but I had no interest in doing musicals. You know, I went to a school where we didn't even do many musicals. The years that I was there, I think we did 2 musicals. So just monologue, straight acting. I had 7 monologues ready to go if I had to do it. And I ended up only doing maybe 2 to 3 monologues from repertoire.
And so where did you end up choosing to go?
So I auditioned for 6 schools and I got into all of them. And then I decided I wanted to go to Emerson College. I auditioned for NYU and I went to the audition for Emerson, and I just felt so relaxed at the end of the audition. Just felt so at ease. I felt very confident in what I had done. And I remember I called my theater teacher and said, like, I really did a good audition for this school. And she asked me why. And I said, I don't know. I thought that the man who led the audition was very um, calming and very encouraging. And she said, well, that's something to keep in mind. Like, you're going to go to a school where he might be your professor. And so you might want to go to a school where you feel like this, you're going to be able to do your best work because they make you do your best work.
That's good
Um,
advice.
yeah. And I did this audition for Emerson and I went to every single audition like, I don't care. I already know what school I'm interested in. And it really had me come in with such confidence in every single audition that I had after. Um, and I was doing Streetcar Named Desire at my high school after, and we were going into rehearsals. And my theater teacher was like, "You have a new kind of pep in your step. Like you are really grounded." And I owe it all to that audition. Honestly, I think that audition really transformed me into as a actor who is able to just breathe, let all of the expectations of trying to be impressive go. Right. Right. And that is something that uh I think it's something that it gets lost, right? We get so much into I have to get it. 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 They have to like me. They have to want me. And yeah, our work is sometimes dependent on who's going to give you a job. But,
Mhm.
it's a two-way street. You know, yes, I want you to give me a job. I want you to want to work with me, but I also want to work with you too. I also want to work with you. And I want to go to an audition, feeling very passionate about the work that I'm auditioning for. That's not always the case, right? Sometimes it's a job. But if that's there, wonderful. I know I'm going to do my best work. If the team that's there, the people in the room, they're make you do your best work, if they're welcoming, if they're encouraging, if they are not cold, you come in and you're like, you say, hi, how you doing? And they're just waiting for you to be done. That can happen. Absolutely.
Mhm.
You go in and do your best anyway. But some of those projects, if I don't get them, I leave from them being like, well, great, because that director and we didn't mesh, right? And I don't know how this process I don't know how I would have done my best work with this individual.
That is so
Surprise.
important
Yeah.
to have for actors to think about having their own personal power in the audition room.
The thing is, you can book it or not book it. But if you do book, you got to decide if you're going to do it or not. And so what you need to be thinking about that already. You need to already be thinking about, do I like this? Why? You know, and sometimes, they'll ask you questions. Well, do you have any questions for me? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this play? Why are you
Mm.
doing it now? Right? Because that might be some extra labor you might have to do once you're in rehearsal, right? I have to now justify to the world who's going to see this work, the play or the movie or the TV show, right? And I have to be able to tell the story to the best of my ability. And so I need to make sure that I can be invested in this work, that I can be invested in this team, that I'm getting the money, the pay, that I deserve to do my best work as well.
Hey, let's go back in time again. And I just want to know, in your experience at Emerson, what happened to you there as an actor? How did you change? What were some peak experiences or challenges?
I would say that initially I came to Emerson because of the professor that I auditioned for, who I learned later on in the school was not quite who I thought he was. I
Mm.
think um, he gave me the same kind of spiel that he gave everyone else at the time.
Mm.
but quickly I had to learn to find my own voice at Emerson, especially as a Black, at the time wasn't out, but queer male.
Mhm.
And I went to a school where there wasn't a lot of Black actors in my department. There were two Black professors. And, you know, we are doing Chekhov, we're doing Shakespeare, we're doing Tennessee Williams. But I had never worked with a Black playwright, Black writing. I had never, um, I had one Black director who was a guest director. And so there was so much learning about who, not only through the acting, but as through my education, and being in a new place. I went from Ohio to Boston. I had never even visited the school or been to Boston before. My first day of school was my very first time in Boston. And so I had no idea what to expect. I had to find my own voice. You know, you're in college, everyone wants you to do this thing, do this thing, do this thing. You're saying yes to everything. You're in 50 student groups, 8 shows, you know.
What were some of those things?
So I, at a party, was singing a jazz song. I love jazz. And so I was singing a jazz song, and a friend of mine was singing it with me. And we were kind of doing a duet. And at the end of it, another friend was like, wow, you have a beautiful voice. I'd never heard that before. And I said, oh, thank you. And it was like, do you sing jazz? I was like, no, I was just, you know, fooling around. And they said, oh, well, you know, I had this idea that I'm thinking of where we turn Shakespeare into jazz music. And I was like, really? Like, you know, at the time I had never even done Shakespeare. And so, yeah, it's like kind of a thing where we'll like, you know, analyze the text and then we'll like put it to song and sing it. A couple months later, we're in the basement of our school with a few other folks who are singer performers in the musical theater department. We had a couple musicians from Berklee College of Music that was down the street. And we were putting together this jazz show. And so we took all these sonnets and some soliloquies and just songs from Shakespeare, and we turned them into a whole jazz show, New Orleans style. So we had some New Orleans jazz, we had some blues in there, some early rock in there. We did all of this research for different music from the style there. Our director was from New Orleans, and it was the very first time I was an actor musician because I was coming in, learning the text, how to communicate that and sing that out, but also coming up with my own ideas of how to make the song sound. And it was such a collaborative experience. And I think throughout my entire time at Emerson, I learned how to be a collaborator. Someone who doesn't sit waiting for someone to say, move there, stand over here, do that. I'm coming up with my own ideas. I'm coming in ready to create. You know, I'm coming in ready to
add to, it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And we took the show, we performed it in the basement of our school, our cabaret space. That's where it started. People loved it. We're like, you need to do it more, do it more, do it more. And so we went to New Orleans. We performed it at the Shakespeare Festival in New Orleans twice.
Wow.
So 2 times to New Orleans. And that completely transformed music. That allowed us to be in the scene, hearing the music on the streets, having that influence our work. And so then I learned that I'm an actor, collaborator, researcher, you know, so I have to go and sift through work to find how I want things to sound and how I want them to feel. And after we did that, we went back to our school, performed it on our main stage. Then we took it to New York and got a chance to perform it for Sleep No More which is another fun adaptation of Shakespeare in New York, adaptation of Macker's. And so it was through these experiences of working and collaborating with like-minded people from my school that, we were creating. And that's what I loved about theater, about art, was the idea that I can create something.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of our work, I feel, is like you get a piece of paper, you get a book, and you memorize the lines, and you go and you say it. But there's so much of you're creating a character, and you're drawing from what's around you. I didn't realize until after I graduated, where I started working with Black art, Black playwrights, Black directors, that I could start pulling from my experiences growing up, and I could start pulling from the voices that I would hear with my uncles and my grandma, the voices that we hear at church or on the bus or on the street corner, that I could use those stories, that I could absorb those stories as a sponge to create my own, right? Create my own characters to begin writing. And so much of Emerson was the experience of finding my voice and using my voice as a tool, being able to learn how to add to yes and, how to, get in a room, in a space, and someone says, you have 10 minutes and, I want you to create a physical piece that explores your grief or something like that. And having the idea of this is an exciting opportunity. Coming from high school, wanting to just be good enough, wanting someone to say, yes, that's great, that works. Yeah. Do that. Into having a much bolder, fiercer voice. Not only did I go into the school, leave Emerson becoming a better actor and collaborator, but I came out after I graduated. I found a new sense of my identity as a Black person in this country, and being aware of how we are treated in this country and the issues that we face, and what work I want to do to help us in that fight,
Sure.
To find pride in my voice, and pride in my community, pride in where I come from, and my family, and my history, and my lineage, and allowing that to translate into all works that I touch. So when I touch Shakespeare, I'm not touching Shakespeare so I can be my Elizabethan iambic pentameter. I am touching Shakespeare as a Black queer male that's touching Shakespeare. And you might see that. And as a matter of fact, you will see that in the show, right? And that opens up so much more of the work itself by allowing the audience to see a different experience that they might not have been used to hearing before, that Shakespeare wouldn't have dreamed could have existed in his work.
I think that's so exciting, but I have a question for you. What might that look like when you talk about that difference between the Elizabethan and a young Black queer artist sharing his own experiences? How, in practical terms, what might an audience see or notice that feels different? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, for sure. I just did my very first professional performance of Shakespeare last year. It was Othello. I did Othello at Court Theater in Hyde Park. And one thing, before I get into that, I would say for the actor, there's one thing that you'll notice is a difference. We often get these classic Shakespeare, Greek, Chekhov, what have you, Moliere, whatever, and you think, oh, I can't possibly do that. And I hear so many actors say, oh, I'm terrible at Shakespeare. I can't do Shakespeare. I'm terrible at Shakespeare. I don't understand it, blah, 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 blah. And that is something that we, especially folks of color, have internalized. that I am not, because we have not historically done this, and we have not been historically not been allowed to do this or been in the room to do this, unless you're Othello, that I can't. I don't know how. I am not able. And that is something that just needs to be done away with, right? I feel every actor has the capability of doing Shakespeare. It might take some more work, right? For some people might not, some people get it right away. Some people love the language. Some people it takes a lot more work. It can still be done, right? And so that is something I had to do. You know, I was lucky and fortunate enough to have done it in college. So I could say to myself, you know, you've done this before, you could do this again. But, you know, on the scale, and I'm a professional now, and now there's an audience, now there are critics. And so in this production of Othello, we had multiple people of color in the show. Othello was Black. I played Cassio, I was Black. Bianca was a drag performer, Black Hispanic drag performer. We had Argentinian Amelia. We had Asian American Duke. And so much of the show was, or the makings of the show was us analyzing the text and seeing how it was written, right, in a way that doesn't give each of us the freedom, being who we are, where we come from, to have power, strength, right? You know, a lot of the language is very degrading and demoralizing to women. A lot of it is, you know, is highlighting Othello being Black and diminishing him because he's Black. And so we adapted this work into a 90-minute production, making necessary cuts, you know, whether it feels like things were redundant or we were feeling things kind of the language that we did not feel was useful, you know, useful for the ultimate storytelling for the people that were telling the story. And so for me in particular, I had an issue with Cassio. You know, I'm a Black queer male. And so the fact that that I'm in love with another male on stage who's a drag performer who's ostracized because of their profession and because of their gender fluidity. It was really important for me that Cassio not be one of the people that's calling Bianca a whore or strumpet, or that he's playing her and pulling her along, but that he is genuinely in love with this person. And he's also in a position of power where he has to kind of walk the line of how open he can be to be respected. And that's his whole journey of looking at another successful Black man who's the leader of this general, who's super masculine, leads with his body, leads with his chest, who gets into a jealous rage, you know, and seeing that and being able to say, okay, I want to be in this position. I have a respect for this other Black man, but I also have something in me that I can't deny and I can't let go of. And so you would see every time I would interact with Othello, it was kind of like watching him and a sort of longing, but also a longing for the position, but also a fear of being a knowingness of like, this is a man who's losing himself, right? You would see my interactions with Bianca be loving, you know, us taking moments of quiet where we're holding each other and, you know, and stroking each other's faces, and me putting on her heels and her getting my jacket together, you know, us dancing together. You know, there's a moment where Iago is telling Cassio, oh, you think you and Bianca are going to get married? And in the original script, he's like, "Oh, I couldn't marry that whore. Like, of course not. Me marry her? Whatever. I'm a man. I would never marry this. You know, she's beneath me." And me deciding to change cutting out calling her a strumpet and things, and changing the way I would say it, the tone of it, so that it was like, I don't know, like I don't maybe I like I no, I couldn't possibly get married, like just feeling like the thought of like, oh, well, maybe I don't know if I would. This is making me flustered to think about that I could be this person. I could marry this person. I could be in love with this person. That and then also, how men do the posturing of like, yeah, I'm feeling this way, but yeah, nah, I'm not gonna marry. But also, I'm like, maybe I would think about that, right? And so it's like having the audience. I have so many people say, I have never seen a Casio like this. I never thought so much about Casio in this production. And so the story ends with, of course, Casio taking over. And by the end of the play, when Othello is gone, is dead at this point, I deliver the last speech of the show. But before I deliver that last speech, I have Bianca take my hand, so that we are presenting my real, authentic self in front of the entire audience, addressing them to let them know that we are stepping into a new era. And this new era is letting go of the jealousy, the sort of ownership that men think they have over women, the sort of insecurities that we have in being ourselves, and allowing others to be themselves, to be independent, and that we're stepping into a new era. And how fitting to do that in this day and age, where I think people really need to see themselves in this work. We as, if you're Black, if you're or a person of color, if you're queer, if you're non-binary, trans, you belong in this book as well.
Thank you for sharing that so specifically and articulately. And it also sounds, that experience, like just the kind of experience you have said that you love. Yeah. Being in a room where you have the ability to offer so much of yourself and your own creativity and your own take on it. And that this was a production which allowed and invited that kind of input.
Yeah. And can I allow my experiences, being who I am, shape the story that I'm telling? Yes, I had the opportunity to play a Black queer person in Othello. I also just finished a show at Steppenwolf Choir Boy playing a straight baseball player, right? Mm-hmm. But I was able to do that role because of my experience, the Black queer man.
Well, that's great to hear too, because it's a reminder that, right, we want to have opportunities to draw from our own experiences in our own life and put that into a story, whether very directly or to kind of parallel to the story. But we also want to be other people on stage. That's part of what we got into the business for, was to pretend, right?
Absolutely.
What were the first steps for you? Did you have an agent immediately? Were you pounding the pavement? Were you making work on your own?
So, I immediately after graduating from college, I spent my last year abroad and then came back, and then kind of had a panic attack because I was graduating. I had no job. I had no place to live either. And so I'm like, wow, this is really this is real life. Like, this is it. There's no more
comes
school.
Fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, so there's no more school. I have no job. I have no place to live. And so I was working as a barista for a little bit at a coffee shop in Boston. And then I had worked in the admission department at my college for three and a half years prior. And so there was a position available where I could travel the country going to various high schools and organizing events to bring prospective students to Emerson. I traveled all over the country, and one of the stops was Chicago. I didn't realize that there was such a massive theater community here. And I went to go see, a friend told me at the time that Hypocrites was a theater company here. And he told me to go see a show there. They did really amazing shows. And so I went to go see a show there, Endgame, and loved it. Thought it was incredible. I met some folks there at the theater and talked to them, and was telling them that I was also an actor and interested in the theater scene. And they were like, "Yeah, the store for the theater all over Chicago." I had no idea, but they were like, "There's tons of theater in Chicago." That was just the idea that everyone was working in theater and a variety of different scales, and that there were so many people interested in watching the show.
So how long was that time between finishing graduation and the time you moved to Chicago?
This was 6 months after I graduated from college.
What was the first thing you did when you got here in terms of finding your way in the industry?
I spent a whole year and a half not doing anything related to the industry. I worked at the Art Institute, sold tickets. I worked as a telemarketer at one point in time. I went to see shows, but I didn't really know how to get in. I didn't have an agent. I knew no one in the theater scene here. I had my first audition for Black Ensemble Theater. I'm pointing this way because I live down the street from it. And I remember I got a call back, the first call back, and I mixed the time and missed it. And so I came an hour and a half late, and they said they couldn't see me. And I remember getting on the bus ride home and crying, being like, that was my biggest chance to finally get to perform. And I blew it. Fast forward a couple months later, I had a friend who was also moving from Boston to Chicago, and they were entering into an acting showcase, Women Theater Alliance showcase. And it was a showcase for actors and directors, women or female identifying. And, she needed someone to be in the scene with someone else who was submitting. And, if you want to submit, you can. We really need an actor. And I just thought of you. And I said, yes. I know I hadn't worked on anything in so long. I just wanted something to work on. And I said, yes. And, at the time I had never done a showcase because I was in my program at school, we didn't have a showcase. So I had never done a showcase, and I didn't realize how big of a deal it was. And that's how I landed my first agent. My first agent was Shirley Hamilton Talent. My first audition was for Court Theater. They were doing a new production called Man in the Ring. Did a workshop with them, and then booked the show. And that kind of started, kind of a ripple effect from there. And it was a thing of, I did one show, and I've done the storefront theater as well. I would do readings. I would go to opening nights and talk to people, talk to people who were there at the opening night. People go, I haven't seen you before. What's your name? And, that's what I loved about Chicago. It was a family. People were very nice and welcoming, going into auditions and people introducing themselves, and us, following each other on Instagram or, becoming friends on Facebook, and them inviting me to see the shows or inviting me to some gathering that they're having. And so those were the first times I was building a network for myself here in the city. Fast forward, I was coming to do a gig here, a gig there, maybe doing one show a year, maybe doing 2 shows a year. 2018, April of 2018, I was at the time understudying at About Face Theater, and I was doing a children's adaptation of Romeo and Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was broke, had no money. I was coming home from a late night, coming home from a friend's birthday party. And on my way home, I was shot in a drive-by shooting
Oh
in
my
that
gosh.
town. Ended up in the hospital for a month. I lost 40 pounds. Took me 3 months to learn how to walk. And in that time, I wanted to write. I wanted to write something. Kind of was just trying to figure out how to deal, cope with the things that I was going through and kind of find a way to move through them. And so a friend of mine was working on a screenplay before I was in the hospital. We were talking about it, and I was gonna, shoot it with him that spring. And after I was shot, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I was like, I don't really know when I'm going to be able to perform again. And they were like, I want to do this with you. Would you want to do this? And I said, well, if we do it, I have to put, we have to explain what's going on, because of the love story, at the time my body was, was going through a lot of different things. And he said, yeah, you can, if you want to like write something, like we'll put that writing into this film. And so I wrote this character that was experiencing this trauma and also trying to be in a relationship at the same time. And so we wrote this film together. We filmed it 3 months after me getting out of the hospital. I was filming this in New York. We spent 2 years kind of like making it its best. And then we released it into the world, to the film circuit, festival circuit, right at the start of 2020. 2018 was a year in which I let everything go as far as if I thought I was good enough or if I thought this was something I was supposed to be doing with my life. I think that I had the opportunity to have a second chance at life, and I knew that I was brought back to be here because I have the ability to tell stories, and I was going to tell it to the best of my ability. And I just had no doubt that this is what I was supposed to be doing. And so I had a new layer of confidence going into the audition room. And after 6 months after getting in the hospital, I booked a 2-person show. It was like my largest role to date. And then I was booking after that. 2020 came. Everyone had plans, and so did I. Of course, those plans went down the drain because of our pandemic. My film was going to headline the largest LGBTQ film festival in the world in London. We were going to travel there, tour all over Europe, tour all over the States, and none of that happened, right? So a lot of the stuff went to be virtual, and it was because it was virtual. A lot of people got a chance to watch it. A lot of there's really nothing else to do but watch movies, right? And so a lot of folks got a chance to watch it. We got rave reviews from the Hollywood Reporter and Variety Magazine and IndieWire and Vogue and all these magazines and publications, and getting interviews. And I had someone reach out to me who got a chance to see the film and was really touched by my performance, and asked if I wanted to sign with them. And it was an LA, New York agent. And, it was really, it was another moment in my career where I was telling myself, you're a stage boy. You only do in theater, I don't think you can do film or TV. It's a dream, but like this is what you're good at. And that notion, I completely let go of that. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it all. And I'm gonna really go all the way with it. And so, I signed with the agent. I booked my first guest star on a TV show. I was still booking things here in Chicago. I got my equity card. I changed agents from my Chicago agent. I changed to another agency here. And it was just me for the first time really starting to look at my career. At first it was kind of just doing the work and wanting to do work and get a job. And now I'm in the molding stage of wanting to have my sights set on where I want to be and starting to put the pieces in place on how to get there. Now I'm in a position in my life where I am doing the things that, I moved here to Chicago dreaming to be on the Steppenwolf stage. And finally this past spring, getting a chance to be on the Steppenwolf stage. And not feeling like, I'm just so happy to be in the room, or I can't believe this is happening to me. But being in the space and saying, this is right. This is correct. This is what you've been working for. And
you deserve it.
This is what you deserve. My theater teacher always had some just great quote. Use it, everyone. She said, this industry is much like you're waiting at the deli counter. You got your ticket, you're waiting for people to call your number. You make sure you're staying close, listening for it. And it feels like everyone's number has been called before your own. And you're wondering, when am I going to eat? Right? When am I gonna get my number called? But she said, but you must, when they call your number, know exactly what you're gonna get. And she's like, don't come to the counter being, I don't know, know exactly what you want to eat. And the work is not only just preparing your auditions. The work is not getting your monologue set. The work is not just looking online for auditions. Your work is your life. How we are humans that tell human stories. How can I be the best human? And so how do I take care of my mental? How do I take care of my spirit? How do I take care? Because this work will exhaust you. Even when you're doing it, it will exhaust you or run you into the ground. And so how can I be there for myself? How can I take care of myself? How can I take care of my unit, my family, my chosen family, so that we have each other's back, so that when I'm going to New York on Saturday for my callback, I'm with my friend who helped me tape for the callback, and we're both here at the callback, and we're both booking. We're both going to be helping each other book. And it's because we've maintained our friendship and that we have really supported each other through thick and thin that we're able to hold each other down, to lift each other up, And so the work is all expansive.
Well, I have to say that I'm grateful that you are with us still, and that you have shared so much of yourself here talking to me, and have such a strong sense of purpose, even before your accident. But the focus you have now is such a great example for young actors, not just professionally, but that kind of sense of personal mission and doing the things that you need to do. Before we go, I've got 3 questions for you.
Talk to me.
One actor who you deeply admire and a quick reason why.
I admire Regina Hall. I admire her because she started off doing comedy, and I think a lot of people saw her in the scary movies and they pigeonholed her as being able to do one thing. And she has showed over her career her love of storytelling and her ability to tell a variety of different stories. And so I have been so happy to see her journey in her career of not only just being the funny, wild character, but also moving into some really rich, some really complex storytelling.
one thing that really delights you about being on stage or in front of the camera doing your work?
I love meeting audience folks. Sometimes, so a lot of people will, kind of sometimes shy away from the audience or something like that. But it is really amazing to not only in the experience of meeting people who have seen shows and say, this really moved me. Or, recently I had a lot of queer people come up to me and say, I've always been afraid of being friends with straight people because I felt they wouldn't get me. And this play made me feel like maybe that might not be the case. Maybe that could be a possibility for me. Or doing this film and having people write to me on Instagram and tell me their stories and tell me how the movie has affected them and how they related.
One thing you want to accomplish going forward?
I want to be a force, a powerful force that not only in my storytelling, but in my being, in my person, that allows me to take not only stories, but take my voice and my advocacy to be able to stand up for those who have not often been heard. And some of those people are a part of my community. So that's the goal.
Well, can I tell you that you have already partially accomplished that, because I feel the power, the powerful force that you are. And I thank you for sharing it with me and spending this time on An Actor's Arc. And I wish you all the best going forward. I know it's going to be great. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. This was an absolute pleasure.
This has been An Actor's Arc. An Actor's Arc was created and hosted by Sean Douglas, with special guest Sheldon D. Brown. Theme music by Chris Kriz, sound engineering by Grover Hallway. An Actor's Arc Season 2 was made possible by a grant from the alumni of Northwestern University.